Alright, everyone, welcome back. I hope everyone's been doing well. Better than me since our last conversation. Hopefully the music isn't too loud as usual. I'm listening to the Martian Gothic official soundtrack. It's a terrible PlayStation 1 video game, but I saw it on there and I was like, you know what? I do like the soundtrack. Anyway, there is something I think that I'm going to do with this second video that's not in accordance with what the first video was. You know, the first video was a lot of me talking about things in the past that really gave me extreme depression. And I will talk about that a little as well, but I think I want to send some positive affirmations after that for everyone. Things that helped me with depression, as opposed to just focusing on the completely overall doom grinding, negative. So, obviously, nobody's really born with depression, like inherently, like just, oh, I'm a depressed person, I'm a depressed child. Or maybe they are, I don't know, I'm not a fucking doctor. All I know is that I had a good childhood, and, the one thing I always remember is that the first 12 years of my life were extremely happy. My parents and us, me and my sister, we were like the Brady Bunch, and we had a lot of good times of us just going to school and growing up in the 90s, and how that was probably, like the Matrix said, the last great decade of mankind. It's kind of felt that way. It's certainly gotten worse since the early 2000s. With 9/11, then just the recession in 2008, and nothing's been the same since then, in my opinion. But anyway, none of that really affected my vibes growing up. I think, what all started for me, in terms of like trauma and everything. And I wrote a whole book on this. I'll leave a link in the comments. I'm not going to get rich even if every one of my subscribers went and bought it today. But I think the problem with depression and anxiety especially is when you're growing up, you're a child, you don't have any inclination of negativity until it's brought into your world. And my parents and my dad also, he really was keen on raising me and my sister to be normal and soft even. We weren't raised to be tough. Like Mustangs, they're tough. That's an Outsiders reference. So when my parents started arguing and, falling into what would eventually be their divorce around when I was 13, 14, it was really hard. And I'm sure people can relate, earth-shattering to your feelings when you see your parents arguing physically, which sometimes I'd have to get in the middle of, and my mom would say the god-awful things in front of me, and my dad would as well. And they would argue over the dumbest ass shit. Like, you're like, why the fuck are you arguing over this? So goddamn stupid, you children, And, so I don't know. I think that came as quite a shock because my mom actually did something terrible. She made us pack all our things, and I vaguely remember this. I honestly don't even really remember it, but we packed all our things and we got everything, and then we left the house, and she'd already like got an apartment set up down the street. And so when my dad came home, we weren't there, we were gone, and he realized, oh, she left with them. And I can only imagine how that felt. Not that he was any, angel, but all of that built up, depression because of just having to deal with both of them, because they couldn't deal with each other, and I'm the oldest, so I had to be in the middle of it. And while I was depressed, I started experimenting with drugs and yada yada yada. But I was very smart about it in a way that, where I said to myself, I'm only going to experiment and I'll never use a needle to inject myself with any drugs. Like, I had rules, morals, whatever. And, it was easy at first because, like, my dad and my mom would both shower me with gifts to, try to make us happy, whatever, or make us love them more than the other. So I got like a PlayStation 1 with a bunch of games for my dad, like Parasite Eve and Final Fantasy 8 and Resident Evil's favorite game series ever. And then my mom would eventually get me a GameCube and just buy us clothes. Like, I was into punk rock, very much just getting into punk rock at that time. So I had a mohawk and I wore plaid pants and my Spagoli checkered Vans and yada yada yada. But the key part of this is that it sucks for my dad because he was living in the house by himself. So on weekends, I'd skateboard over there because it really was just down the street. It was probably like a 15-minute, 20-minute skateboard. And then, eventually my mom took him to court. She got the house. She got the car. She got alimony. She got child support. She got everything. She cleaned him out. And in a weird way, it felt like she'd set all that up in a way, because like she would call the cops on him, and then it would create this record of like him being the violent one, Anyway, what I'm leading to is this depression, this anxiety, this trauma that I ended up developing. And it all came from a place of my mother, mostly. My dad kind of vanished into thin air once she got everything, He tried to like work extra hours and like get a home, and then he married my stepmom and he'd been through 5 marriages today, so they didn't stay together. In fact, they divorced, got remarried, then she took him for money after they remarried and divorced. I mean, my dad's not clearly not smart with the ladies. So anyway, when my mom and us moved back into our home, we didn't know, but she had been going out every weekend, and she was doing this thing that she called Weekend Warriors, like the song. And she would go party and go to these bars, and she met this biker dude, and he was all right. And she dated him for a whole year without us knowing. She'd be like, oh, I'm going on a walk or a jog, and then she'd just go to the bar with him. And she'd get all up in her fucking Nike sneakers and everything. Like, the whole gimmick was going full frontal. So anyway, she became an alcoholic. And we moved back in the house. And then, at that time, again, like I said, I was experimenting with drugs. And still wasn't an addict or anything at all. And at some point, like it just swept through my neighborhood. Like it was the new thing, even though it's probably been around for years, but it was the early 2000s. And everyone just started doing meth. Like Arizona just became one of the meth capitals, Arizona, New Mexico. And everyone was doing it. And eventually my mom started doing it. And, it got, and again, I wrote a whole book about this. It'll be in the comments if you feel free to get it if you want. It's called Super Punks. And, there's a trauma that developed there because my mom became incredibly ill as a drug addict. And she's still one today. Never quit. There'd be lapses, of course. Lapses of sobriety. But, so anyway, people started coming over to my house. I was friends with these quote unquote drug dealers, that I buy pot from. And she would become friendly with them, and then those drug dealers would start using methamphetamines, and then she would buy it from them, and then, everyone just started hanging out at our house. Complete strangers, people I didn't know, drug addicts. I remember coming home one time and going to my room, and I'm like, what is that? And I heard all these voices, and I, looked in my room, and there's, 10 people who'd moved my dresser in my room to the center of my room, and they put my mattress in the corner against the wall, and they were doing meth literally on my dresser in the middle of the room, just standing around it. 10 people who I didn't even know. A lot of them were high school kids, some of them, I'm guessing maybe 20s, early 20s, just barely out of high school. And these things were going on, and then my sister would be in her room, trying to, as a child, just trying to, I don't know, ignore the darkness outside of her room, all these drug addicts, and my mom arguing and yelling and acting like a complete psychopath, and it was an absolute nightmare. And it eventually evolved in my mom attacking me at one point with knives, and trying to kill me. And the police were called, and they blamed me. And I'm out here bleeding from my arm from being nicked with a knife. But I look like, what I look like. I have a mohawk. I'm skinny. I probably had black circles around my eyes from, whatever, my own drug abuse. Which, again, this is a 6-month period in my life. But there was a trauma that developed because of all those situations, me having to fight with my mom and argue in front of strangers and some of my friends, and watching her be extremely just out of it, conked out high, And, I felt like I was suffocating being there. So I'd always try to not be home, but then my sister would be home, and I'd feel bad. And so then she started going to her friend's house and being over there all the time, and we were just trying not to be around my mother. And so, well, what happened, Stefan? Yeah, I'll tell you. So eventually it came to the hilt where, I'm trying to tell my mom, Mom, you need to get these people out of the house, please. You need to stop doing drugs. I don't even do them anymore. I just smoke pot, cigarettes, drink a beer here and there. Again, I'm a teenager saying this shit. And there's so many other stories, in the book, that are just detail, how fucking bad it was. But, the places she would take me and stuff, and, the places she went to get drugs, and anyway. Sorry, I got a headache. So anyway, it came to the point where I was trying to get her off drugs and trying to, and she would deny it every single time. She'd be like, I don't do drugs. I don't do drugs. You're the problem. You're the problem. You're just like your dad. You're just like your dad, like over and over. And so anyway, she knew that, I was getting to the point where it's like, I'm going to start calling the police on you and, blah, blah, blah. So she signed me back over to my father, and then now my sister's left alone there. And I can't do anything about it. My dad lived all the way out in the desert in the middle of fucking nowhere. So I had to go live out there. Uproot myself, all my friends, everything. And eventually my sister came and my mom had to, she got so bad that she had to move to Durango, Colorado, where my grandmother lived, and get sober. And she was sober for a very small time, and then she came back to Phoenix and got on it again, and the pattern continued. But the trauma, the weird part is that when she left, and as I lived with my father, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I wouldn't be able to relax. I always felt like I was on edge. Every night, my dad had a liquor cabinet. I'd have to go swipe some just to drink some to make myself go to sleep. That's definitely loud. And anyway, this trauma developed where I became an alcoholic. I was trying to hide the pain, hide the fact of what happened and how my mom tried to come at me with knives and all these things. Again, you have to remember what I was saying at the beginning. I was a soft child. I wasn't built for this, stuff, this turmoil, this anger, this angst, this fucking fury that she had, being around drug addicts all the time. I wasn't built for that. I was built for good morning, yes, I'll take my vitamins and say my prayers, whatever. But eventually, being in those situations, it made me tough. And I would get into fights with my friends, and I'd go over, I remember going over this dude's house who sold me pot, and he's like, does anyone want a box? And he was way bigger than me, and I was like, yeah, I'll box you, I don't care. And I was being reckless and doing dumb things like that. And so all through my 20s to my 30s, and when I turned 30, I said enough is enough. I'm not going to drink anymore. But all through my 20s and my 30s, and this ties into what I said last episode with Alexis, my ex-girlfriend who wanted me to marry her. That trauma stayed with me for all those years. For years, I tried to drink it away and hide it and pretend there was nothing wrong and smile in the face of sadness and despair. And, I'm starting to sound like a goth kid or something. It's all just despair, man. Just despair. Life is meaningless. But when I turned 30, I no longer wanted to suffocate. And here's where I'm going to try and, invoke the positivity that I found in that, because when I was an alcoholic, which I was, I thought alcohol brought out my personality. I thought it brought out the best in me. I'm so funny, when I drink, everyone loves me. I'm a lot more talkative. I'm social. There's no anxiety. I'm going to put some different music on. Hold on. All right. Different music. So anyway, alcohol reinvigorated what I thought was my humanity. I thought it brought out everything that I had suppressed all those years. But the truth is, alcohol is a lie. It lies to you. Who you are when you're drinking is not who you really are. It's a comical version of yourself. It's a fucking fallacy. It's bullshit. It's clown shoes. And, I think alcohol can be fun in moderation over a lot of time. Like if you get drunk twice a year, like if you drink every month once, but if you're drinking every week, then I think you develop a habit easily, take it from me. Everyone's different, of course, but that's my advice. It's not even worth drinking anymore. There's so much like fucking toxins they've found in it now. The U.S.'s food is poisoning us, but that's another discussion some other time. But yeah, that trauma left unchecked, what I'm trying to get at is bad for you. If you feel like you're suffering from trauma, if you feel like your depression has lasted longer than it should have, because, we all get depressed, it's natural. But I mean, if you're doing it for years, if you're in therapy for years and you're not finding you're recovering, then there's obviously problems to be addressed, right? I'm not a doctor. But I know from my personal experience, I'll say I's, not you's. I, as an individual, have learned those lessons. And the lessons were always that when you try to bury anxiety, depression, trauma, hate, anger, jealousy, comparing yourself to other people, all those things, I think what you're really doing is you're just hurting yourself, and you're going to continue perpetuating that pain if you don't find an outlet for it, if you don't find the cure. And my personal cure, which is all this is really about, was, and I heard Ben Affleck say this actually recently about his own alcoholism, because I do think it's true. It's really true. If there's a consensus on it. And the consensus, I think, is at some point you just say, okay, I've had enough. I can't continue existing this way. And some people do it in suicide. They're like, I have had enough of living. I can't continue this way because of the pain. And then some people, recover. And I think recovery is the better option. Having lived through it. But I'll tell you, all those years of drinking, it really took a toll on my body. And I guarantee I'm not supposed to feel the way I feel now in my body at this age. I think I was supposed to feel this 10 years from now. But that alcohol, it saps everything away from you. Your identity, your body, your health, your everything. And I'm so glad that when I turned 30, I was like, all right, I came to that point. I've had enough. I cannot continue waking up every day, every other day, hungover, trying to recover, trying to put on a happy face, trying to hide everything that I am. And, that's when I started really writing the book, Super Punks. And I was like, I'm just going to get it all out. I'm going to tell the truth. Everyone involved in that, because there's people I hadn't talked to in like 15 years, maybe longer. High school people, a lot of people. I told them, like, I messaged them on Facebook and stuff. I'm still friends with pretty much everyone who's in the book, except for like the druggies, who I also did talk to. The ones that weren't locked up or quacked out, because that's where a lot of them ended up. But I tell them, I'm going to write about you. This is what I'm writing about, just the truth. This book is 100% the truth. I'm going to try and be as unbiased as I possibly can. Obviously, the book comes from my perspective, so I'm going to have to talk about my feelings, but, yada, yada, yada. And when I wrote the book, I felt relief. Not a lot, like I'd say a mild sense of relief that at least I told this story, and I can finally subject my mom to the truths of which she denies to this day. And I don't think she's read it. I haven't talked to her in 6-7 years. And the book came out like 2 years ago or something. But, and it's weird. I still sell copies to this day. I don't know who the people are, but I still sell them. Anyways, that's not the point. Nobody's getting rich here. So anyway, yeah, I felt better talking about it, writing about it, getting it out. And that's what I think everyone should do, no matter what it is you're going through. Talk it out, get it out. Get sober if you can. Just get a fucking gym membership, because literally the gym saved my ass. It made me feel whole again. It made me feel young again. It brought back my body to me and a sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And it literally took away all of my depression, all of my anxiety. Like when I started being able to handle the stress of the gym, because that's what it is. You're just beating the shit out of your body, and it's stressful. But once you get over the hump, I'd say 3 months in, if you're consistent, and you go like 3 to 4 times a week, then you're golden. I mean, you'll literally feel your whole world will change, because the thing is, you're not just building your body, you're building back up your mind. You're building the stress it can handle. You're building up these walls, these, that protect you. And things that once were so stressful, like anything, think of anything, like carrying groceries in. Those things no longer matter and apply to you. You're like, I can do this, no problem. Anything, I gotta go to work for 12 hours. I can do this, no problem. It's still stressful. I mean, you still fucking hate work. But, sorry, I'm trying to get to my point before the video. Usually I draw and talk into this at the same time. This time I just drew because I wanted to listen to a new vinyl I got. Which was the Smiths album. But I hope that, me telling you these things, if you need to hear them, because it's the truth. It's undeniable that exercise does help our mood, our body, what we put in our bodies. I eat extremely healthy now, except for today. I took a cheat day, but I lost a bunch of weight. I just feel so good. I started skateboarding again, which was something I did all those years ago as a teenager, and I found I started asking myself, like, why did I ever stop doing this? Oh, that's right, because I was doing, smoking pot and stuff, and it's like, but why? Like, I loved it so much, and again, the alcohol I started drinking, it took the identity away, and, you are what you eat. So if you eat like shit, you're going to feel like shit. And a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't feel that bad. I feel awesome and I drink and eat shit all the time. And it's like, when you stop doing all that and you start exercising and you quit, you throw all that shit out and your mind becomes clear and the fog leaves, you're like, oh man, like I felt like shit and I didn't even realize it. Why was I fighting so hard to believe that I wasn't, But anyway, I digress. I felt suffocated for so long, like I had a face hugger on me. And, I didn't need to. And I could have just ended all the pain and the suffering, and I could have brought myself together again and brought myself whole so many years ago. And I wasted so many years in pain over nothing. It wasn't nothing, but over something I could have cured in the ailment of and figured out a long time ago. But I was stubborn, and I thought I knew the answers, and nobody was helping me. And the few people who did give me advice, I thought, oh, I know. I'd always say that, I know. And I didn't want to change. But that's the thing about life and being human, is if we don't continue to evolve and change through our lives, and we stay stagnant, then all we're doing is hurting ourselves. We're not growing as a people. At least I feel that way. Affirmations. So my biggest hope for everyone is that when they hear this episode and they listen to it and they listen to my story and they see, now I'm doing what I love, drawing comic books, which I went very cartoony on this one. I wasn't trying to do like correct anatomy and bullshit like I normally do on my other comic book. But, I found myself, and I remembered what I loved and what brought me joy. And I got rid of the contempt and comparing myself and the jealousy. I was really never a jealous guy, but occasionally I get jealous. And I was possessive, of friends and girlfriends. And I suffered from anxiety so bad that I'd hyperventilate and have to go to the hospital. So many things. Too many things for this video. So just do it, You have nothing, literally fucking nothing to lose. Set the bar low. So every day you'll jump over it back and forth and be like, oh man, I'm breaking records jumping over this low bar. If the bar is to just go outside and be social, or if it's just to pick up the phone and call somebody, then just set the bar low. It doesn't matter, because at least you're making progress. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be. Until one day, you won't even be noticing it. So anyway, that's my rant for this video. That is, the story, the outcome, and hopefully the solution for other people as well. I feel the more we talk about this, the less there's a stigma around it. And I'm going to try and move on to other subjects as well, but I think we need to occasionally take a dip into uncomfortable territory. And I have other depression stories and shit and other things I hope people can understand and relate to, and, know that they're not alone in these situations. But anyway, as I try to wind down and not ramble on, I'm going to ink this art, and then I'm going to do something that Mexicans call the Juan color. One color. I'm part Spanish. It's not a racial thing. Fuck. I'm tired. One color. So I'm going to use one color for this drawing, and I'll show the finished outcome at the end of this video. But life's funny, You think you're growing up and you know everything, and the more you grow, the more you think you know more. You think you're learning and getting older, and then at some point you kind of realize, man, I'm a little full of shit, aren't I? Well, anyway, Till next video. Oh, and an announcement. I'm going to take a break for a little bit. So, I'll see you after the new year. Bye.